From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Swaini Gray. Argentina's President Mauricio Macri has announced new export taxes and a reduction in the number of ministries. Macri says these adjustments are designed to achieve a zero deficit. 11 ministries will be scrapped, among them the Ministries of Health and Labor. This is the first time Macri has acknowledged the country is facing a crisis.
Sabemos que es un impuesto malo.
We know that it's a bad tax, which goes against what we want to promote. We want to promote more exports to generate more quality work in every corner of Argentina. But I have to ask you to understand that this is an emergency and we need your support. I have made the decision to reduce the number of ministries to less than half of what we have now. Governments have different moments, and in each moment they require different teams.
Finance Minister Nicolas Dujovny says the government wants to achieve a fiscal balance by 2019. Dujovny will travel to Washington to meet the head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, on Tuesday. Argentina signed a $50 billion loan with the IMF.
In 2019, we want to reach the primary fiscal balance, before interest, of course. Then in subsequent years, we will increase that result to also cover, with the primary surplus, the payment of interest on the debt, and already have a financial equilibrium.
Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, brings us more.
President Mauricio Macri has announced new measures to face the economic crisis. The government will cut down on the number of ministries in less than half in order to stabilize public spending and reduce the deficit. However, this will lead to massive layoffs. In the agro-industry ministry, 560 workers have lost their jobs in the past 24 hours. He also announced a tax on exports as an emergency measure to balance the accounts of the state. He said these were the worst 5 months of his administration after the country's currency has crashed to record lows. Finance Minister Nicolas Dujovny also announced other policy changes. He also said he will travel to the United States to hold meetings with the IMF to renegotiate new economic agreements in relation with the $50 billion standby finance loan they got from the financial institution.
We continue in Argentina, where the former president, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, reappeared in court on Monday. Fernández must testify about an alleged corruption network discovered during her term. So far, 12 businessmen and high-ranking officials linked to the case have been arrested. Fernández has denied any wrongdoing. She has also denounced this as the political persecution of her. The gold saving plan has started in Venezuela. Citizens can now buy certificates at the central bank as part of a plan aimed to fuel workers and pensioners' purchasing power. President Nicolas Maduro says the initiative will contribute to economic stability.
I'm positive many countries across the world will follow our example. But which was the first one? Venezuela. I invite you to join to the economic recovery program. We continue moving forward to a Venezuela of happiness and peace.
Brazil's vice presidential candidate, Fernando Haddad, is visiting former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in Curitiba. Haddad wants to define the Workers' Party's strategy after the Electoral Supreme Court banned Lula from running for the presidency. The PT insists Lula is its candidate, although Haddad could replace him. The Electoral Court has banned any campaign ad where Lula appears. Brazil has lost some of its most precious historical artifacts after a huge fire swept through the National Museum. Firefighters battled through the night to control the blaze in the Boa Vista neighborhood of Rio de Janeiro. The museum had just celebrated its 200th anniversary. Its collection includes almost 20 million items, but the fire has been dampened.
We worked here on education with different groups from around the world. It's a loss. I'm without words.
It's a loss for the world. This can never be recovered for the people, for the building. There is no way to get it back. Thankfully, no one died, but the loss can never be recovered.
Brazil's National Museum is housed in the old imperial palace of Dom Pedro I. Among its exhibits are skeletons and reconstructions of the country's oldest dinosaurs. It is feared that these, along with most of the museum's items, have been lost in the fire. The National Museum belongs to Rio's Federal University. Like many of Brazil's educational institutions, it has suffered severe financial constraints in the recent years. Since 2013, its total budget was cut by more than half. Maintenance work was left undone and visitor numbers have fallen drastically. Social movements in Mexico mobilized over the weekend to reject the sixth and final annual report by the Enrique Peña Nieto administration. The demonstration ended outside the same parliament building, where the new left-wing majority legislature has been sworn in.
Teachers from the Education Workers Union took to the streets of Mexico City to condemn once again President Peña Nieto's education reform. As the outgoing government delivered its last annual report, they called on President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador to include the unions in preparing a new kind of education.
We want to tell Peña Nieto that his education reform has failed. In spite of his attempts to remove our rights and our job security, it has failed.
With Mexico's 64th Congress beginning its work, social movements outside drew attention to the dire state of the public health service.
They admit us to hospital in chairs, on the floor. There are no medicines, no gas. Once there was no machine to check my heart.
Inside the Congress, the new session was underway. For the first time, there is a left-wing majority in Parliament, led by Morena and its ally, the Party of Labor.
I think that on July 1st, Mexicans punished the PRE and Peña Nieto for a series of failures in investigations against corruption over the president's White House, Odebrecht, and the terrible case of the 43 disappeared Ayotzinapa students.
It is the first time that the people are fully represented in this sovereign body. 308 members of the coalition, almost two-thirds together with the new president. We will make history. It's a big responsibility.
They will have their work cut out. They'll need to review the raft of neoliberal reforms passed by the previous Congress, where the PRI, now reduced to the third party in Congress, approved changes to the Constitution in relation to energy, education and the banks. They will also have to create a new Ministry of Public Security and approve a new Attorney General.
Bolivia's President Evo Morales and his Peruvian counterpart Martin Vizcarra are heading a binational summit in the Bolivian city of Cobejia. The two leaders will discuss the reconstruction of the bi-oceanic train and the cleaning of Lake Titicaca. With the summit, the two countries also expect to strengthen ties and cooperation in the development of the Amazonian region. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute.
Infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deep into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Thousands of supporters of the Nicaraguan government have marched in the capital, Managua. The rally came a day after the United Nations Human Rights Mission left the country. The government says everything has returned to normal after 5 months of political crisis. Anti-government demonstrators also marched in Managua. 2 people were injured when cars were burnt and several roads were blocked. Maria Jose Diaz has more from Managua.
Thousands of Nicaraguans took to the streets of Managua on Saturday as a show of support for families who have lost loved ones in the violence that has marred the country since April. Nicaraguan and FtS flags covered the streets. Marchers held the pictures of those who have lost their lives this year. Marchers were calling for peace on the streets and justice for the hundreds of victims of the opposition violence, as well as for the damage caused all over the country. Marches like this took place all over the country in support of the Sandinista Front for National Liberation. Opposition members also held marches against the government, but they turned violent as some marchers set fire to a police car and attacked security officials. There were also hooded people holding rifles, rocket launchers and Molotov cocktails riding around in pickup trucks with no license plates. The National Police has said they are investigating the people behind this violent march. They say they will use all their resources to serve justice and protect lives of Nicaraguans.
And the Nicaraguan police released an official statement condemning the attack on police officers by armed and hooded men. According to the statement, 2 policemen were attacked on the highway outside Masaya. One of them sustained serious injuries. The attackers also set fire to the police truck. Costa Ricans have protested the arrival of Nicaraguans who are fleeing violence in their country. This is the 2nd march against Nicaraguans in as many weeks. Hundreds have marched on San Jose, saying they do not want Nicaraguan migrants coming into the country. They say there are not enough jobs for those arriving.
So they're allowing people to enter when we have a high unemployment rate? It's common sense. If we have a high unemployment rate, then why are thousands of people coming in and there's no source of work? What's going to happen to these thousands of people? They will commit crimes and create social chaos.
Thousands of members of the Catholic and evangelical churches in Guatemala have marched against the decriminalization of abortion. They've also protested against homosexuality. They say the natural family needs to be protected. Congress is currently discussing a bill that could approve jail sentences of up to 4 years for women who suffered miscarriages. The law could also increase punishments for those undergoing an abortion. The government of Guatemala is also being criticized after refusing to protect human rights defenders. An independent investigation shows thousands of people are being criminalized.
During a meeting in the municipality of Santa Cruz de Verapaz, these people chose to serve as human rights defenders for their communities.
A human rights defender is every person who stands up to defend their land, their people's rights, be they economic, political, social, or environmental.
Defenders say they have voluntarily taken this role after facing a ruthless capitalist model that attacks their people. They say their roles are recognized by the United Nations.
We work under a United Nations resolution. We are recognized internationally as human rights defenders. From the moment we started fighting for communal and independent rights, we became defenders.
The Guatemalan government is a signee of UN Resolution 53/144, which officially recognizes and protects human rights defenders. But social organizations say this agreement isn't being upheld.
They do
not want to do their part. People within the government, even at high levels, demonize human rights defenders and put our lives in danger.
The Human Rights Defenders Network of Guatemala say that over 6,000 defenders are suffering some form of criminalization.
Big businesses are leading this criminalization campaign. They see us threatening their economic interests, so they are allied with the state who provides them with the services of the police and the public ministry.
Between May and July of this year, 8 human rights defenders were murdered. as the UN has deemed the situation for campesinos in Guatemala as alarming.
A group of environmentalists have denounced an attack against them in Mexico. They say the aggression occurred when they were trying to plant trees in an ecological reserve in the state of Chiapas. Around 500 people were threatened by an alleged paramilitary group that wanted them to leave the place. Environmentalists say authorities do not provide enough protection for them. Insects may be the way to solve food shortages in Mexico. So far, those who have already eaten them say they are small and crunchy delights.
This kitchen works non-stop preparing dishes with ingredients that date back to the pre-colonial era. Insects and larvae, which for a long time were eaten only by the indigenous people, have started to make their way into recipes.
I didn't eat them before, but after trying them I can say they are good. This is traditional cuisine. Insects are a delight.
Consuming these delicacies falls in line with Mexican cuisine. Tortillas accompany larvae and red worms simmered with garlic and chile. Chef Rigoberto says anyone can learn how to cook them.
At first we thought it would be hard to cook, but we learned it's actually quite simple.
Traditionally, grasshoppers are collected in the fields of southern Mexico, but they are starting to be bred in the city, to be used as an alternative for healthy eating and to protect the environment.
For a kilo of protein from red meat, you need 10 liters of water. For the same amount of protein from grasshoppers, you only use 1 or 2 liters.
Scientific studies show that there are 400 insect species in Mexico that can be consumed and are a good source of protein, but people look down on this food. This is why experts recommend people start eating them at a young age.
Children hold no prejudices, so through their instinct and curiosity, they will discover grasshoppers are quite tasty. Once you try one, you are hooked. They are delicious with some lime and a little chili.
According to the National Statistics Institute, over 24 million Mexicans live in famine conditions. It's worsened by the over-reliance on processed food with low nutritional value, which has displaced more complete and nutritional ingredients.
Residents from a town in El Salvador have set their streets on fire to celebrate the annual Fireball Festival. Participants pelt each other with rags drenched in gasoline rolled into tight, flaming balls. The festival commemorates a volcanic eruption that occurred in 1658. It is said that the hot lava that flowed from the volcano was actually from the local patron Saint Jerome, fighting the devil with balls of fire. Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says the failed refinery at the state-owned oil company Petrotrin could be sold, and the union gets first preference. He made the announcement in a national address ahead of its closure, but the Prime Minister isn't happy with the union. He alleged that they had declined his invitation to sit on the board of Petrotrin to help with its restructuring. He also accused them of unnecessary work stoppages, which hampered productivity. This week marks 1 year since Hurricane Irma devastated the Caribbean. In St. Martin and St. Barthélemy, 11 people died. The hurricane damaged 95% of the buildings on the islands. Damage was estimated to be around $3 billion. Reconstruction continues on both islands. According to the authorities, the rebuilding has taken longer because of delays by insurance companies. This has affected the tourism industry as well. The West Indian Day Parade is underway in Brooklyn, New York as part of the Labor Day holiday. We're looking at live pictures from the parade. The annual carnival celebrates the culture of several Caribbean countries, from Trinidad to Jamaica. The streets of Brooklyn will be filled with costumes and soca music. New York City is home to the largest Caribbean population in the world, outside of the Caribbean itself.
Today when we march out of pride for the community you come from, march out of pride in this great city, but also march to send a message to Washington that we are a city proud of all the people who make up New York City, aren't we? We are proud to be a great city of immigrants, aren't we? We're not weaker because of immigration, we're stronger because of immigration.
We'll take a short break now. World News is next.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Rwandans have gone to the polls to elect members of parliament. More than 500 candidates from 5 political parties and 4 independent candidates are taking part in the election. The voting will take place over the next 3 days at 2,500 polling stations across the country. Political analysts say the ruling Rwandan Patriotic Front will take the majority of seats. At least 48 members of the security forces in Nigeria have been killed by Boko Haram militants who stormed a village near the border with Niger. The armed group stole weapons and military equipment before they were driven out of the base by the army. Since 2009, Boko Haram has killed 20,000 people and have forced the displacement of some 2.4 million others. Delegates at the China-Africa Cooperation Summit have made a call to strengthen bilateral relations. Our correspondent, Isiao Diaz, was there and she brings us all the details.
During the China-Africa Cooperation Summit, President Xi Jinping has announced 8 measures the Asian giant will undertake over the next 3 years to provide $60 billion in financing to strengthen the relationship with the African continent. Among the measures are industrial development, improving infrastructure, increased imports of African products, reinforced cultural exchange, and safeguard peace and health in the continent. Xi Jinping emphasized that bilateral relations must be developed under South-South cooperation strategies and are based on mutual respect. No preconditions and no selfish or political-minded interest. The president also promoted synergy within the strategies and aligning the goals of the Agenda 2063 of the African Union with those of the Belt and Road Initiative. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa praised the achievements of the Chinese-African cooperation over the past 18 years and criticized comments made by some nations that said these bilateral relations are a new form of colonialism. Nonetheless, President Ramaphosa welcomed the announcement by President Xi Jinping and showed his support for the Belt and Road Initiative, which could provide more export options for the continent, since most of the current exports are for raw material only. The summit will run until Tuesday.
Now it's time to bring you some other stories from around the world.
Spanish rapper Jose Miguel Arenas could be extradited from Belgium after being sentenced to 3.5 years in prison by the Spanish National Court. He is accused of defaming the royal family. The court in Belgium will announce its decision on September 17th.
I am very happy to be free and to be able to truly hug my family and my friends, and will keep going towards the European Court of Human Rights. There are 15 more rappers sentenced in jail within Spain, and we hope to open a precedent and avoid such abuse of power by the state, because the only crime these singers did is being left-wing.
Israeli forces and Palestinian residents in the village of Al-Walaha clashed on Monday during the demolition of their homes. Israel claims their homes were illegally built. After 2 homes were bulldozed, over 100 villagers locked themselves into the remaining buildings in a show of solidarity. Thousands of demonstrators gathered outside the government headquarters in Basra, Iraq on Sunday to protest corruption. Protesters were filmed throwing stones and trying to raid the building. There were minor clashes with riot police. Protests in the oil-rich Basra have been ongoing since July. People in the area are decrying poor services amid a faltering economy that has led to high unemployment rates.
A group of lions from South Africa have been relocated to Malawi. Malawi's Liwonde National Park lost its lion population 20 years ago. Now, the first of several wild lions have been relocated to reintroduce the species. The lion population in Africa has decreased by 42% in just 2 decades. We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sunny Gray. Thank you for watching.